and welcome back to the Reflective Teacher Podcast. As always, I am your host, Selena Woodward. How did you go with last week's episode where we talked all about challenge and learning goals, learning outcomes? I shared some really cool tips and tricks there to support you to measure the impact of your learning outcomes and make sure that the level of challenge was just right for your kids. If you haven't heard that episode, then head to edufolios.org/130. That's edufolios.org/130 right now to tune in, because planning for challenge is actually a really important thing. If you want to get an impact, if you don't have your challenge right, you aren't going to see those big results that you're looking for. So tune into that. I promised last week that this week we would zoom out a little bit, because last week we focused an awful lot on our short-term planning, our individual lesson plannings. And so today I wanted to zoom out a little bit and explore the ideas of medium-term plans and long-term plans, and explore those in the context of the standards, in the context of setting that challenge, and also getting you to really think deeply about your current practices, whether that be at your site, HA and Lead, or at uni, what you're experiencing on prac, what are you being shown in your workshops, or in your first few years out, what you're being given, what you're working with. As you listen to this episode, some of you might be like, lesson planning? I don't do that. What are you on about? Others might be like, totally on that. I don't need to tune into this. You're teaching me to suck eggs. Of course, I know how to plan a lesson and a unit plan, and I know how to plan for the year. I've been doing it for years. Well, as always, I want you to be aware when those voices pop into your mind. When those voices are telling you you have nothing to learn here, I want you to remain curious. Because as I go through this episode, as always, I am going to explore this from lots of different angles at lots of different career stages. My hope here is that you'll get some really strong aha moments, but I have no idea when those aha moments are going to happen. So let me know by commenting, by letting us know at Edufolios on YouTube, where you're going to find a video recording of this podcast, on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Let us know when those aha moments come. Whether that's, oh my goodness, I could write an evidence set about this. Good work, please do. Or whether that's, oh, I wondered what that was about. Or, oh my God, we should be doing this. Let me know, because I'm going to share with you some of my practice as an English and drama teacher today, and explore that practice of medium and long-term planning through some of the lenses of the standards. Now, there is a freebie for this week's episode, which you can download. If you head to edufolios.org/131, that's edufolios.org/131, you can grab this freebie. Now, this freebie contains screenshots of different examples of medium and long-term plans, and a whole heap of reflective prompts going from graduate all the way to lead to help you dive deeper into your thinking around lesson planning, medium-term planning, and long-term planning. Lots of value in this episode today. So let's get cracking. I guess the first thing I want to cover is, what is an MTP, a medium-term plan, and an LTP, a long-term plan? Because I know in different states and territories, in different countries, if you're tuning in from outside of Australia, these terms are acronyms, they get bandied about. We all have slightly different acronyms. So a medium-term plan is what you might call your unit plan. It's an overview of what's going to happen maybe over 6 to 8 weeks, what's going to happen in each week of that, what assessments are you going to have. We'll dive into that a little bit deeper as we go. So a medium-term plan could be a unit plan. A long-term plan is the plan for your entire year group over the year. So as an English teacher, My LTP, my long term plan, is a table that shows me what's happening in every term and for how many weeks and so on. It shows me a map of what the content is that I am going to teach. And we're going to really look into that. The purpose of a long term and a medium term plan in relation to the decisions we are making around content, pedagogy, differentiation, and a whole heap of other focus areas as we move forward. So they're both documents that form part of the planning process. And so far on the podcast, we have spent a bit of time focusing on short term plans, which are your lesson plans, without really giving a good old nod to those medium term or unit plans or those long term plans. And there is a heap of gold when it comes to reflective practice and accreditation in those bigger pieces of the picture. So, like I say, today we are going to zoom out. We're going to examine how we, as departments of English, as the year 3 teachers, are choosing to make conscious choices about the order in which things are delivered, about how assessments are built in. Trust me, there is a heap of gold. So, right here in front of me now, in this freebie that you can download, is a long term plan for year 7. And there is actually a section in here which I've photocopied and popped in here, which shows you just one row of that LTP. And it shows you autumn term 2. And it's a 6-week long project. Now, the whole document shows me from term 1 all the way to term 4, each unit going for how many weeks. It tells me what the focus is. In this case, in the example that I'm giving you, it's a drama play, a play adaptation of Frankenstein by Philip Pullman. It asks me to consider what are the key things that we're going to be studying. In this case, considering the influence of the Gothic horror genre on tradition and the relevance to that in our modern society. They're going to explore dramatic techniques and approaches to text, adapting dramatic devices in their own writing and in their own improvisations. That's the overall goal of this 6-week unit. I've got a nod to cross-curricular. So in performing arts, this connects with dramatic role play. In science, there's an opportunity to look at anatomy and stem cell research, the modern versions of this kind of thing. And in history, there's an opportunity to connect with the history of medicine. It particularly because we want the social historical context of Frankenstein and why this was such a big deal at the time of its writing. I've got a column here that tells me the assessment pieces in the 6-week unit. And as an English teacher, there's always a reading, a writing, and a speaking and listening. And from here, quickly, I can see we're going to do an analytical essay for our reading assessment. And that one's in bold. So I know that that's the key assessment that I will need to report on in this particular unit. There's a writing assessment of rewriting a scene from the play back into the narrative form. And there's a speaking and listening, which is a role play of a group interaction, and there's some discussions. I then got a column that shows me the codes or the numbers from the Australian curriculum of which descriptors are being hit in each of those assessments. And then on the far side, I've got actual sentences taken from the assessment criteria for year 7 to show me exactly how to focus my conversations around this with the kids. So if I go back to that analytical essay, the descriptor part that's been chosen here is my kids need to understand how text structures can influence the complexity of a text and demonstrate an understanding of how the choice of language, features, images, and vocabulary affect meaning. Okay, so I know exactly in this table what it is that I'm expected to do over that 6-week course. So that long-term plan, having that brief amount of detail here, just quickly over the entire year, helps me do a few things. First of all, as a leader in this space, working with the department, working with my team, we can map where we're going to assess what over the year. And if our cohort is showing that they're particularly weak in an area, we can adapt this to make sure that there are opportunities, multiple opportunities to hit those success criteria so that we can track that impact, track that change and that development over time. So maybe they're really not awesome at reading a text and analyzing text structure. So maybe I'm going to do that in the autumn term, and maybe I'm going to do that in the summer term. And I'm going to give my kids an opportunity to do it more than once to develop the skills and be able to compare the meerkat, as it were. Okay. So having these key assessments multiple times means I get to adapt to my cohort, and it means I get to think a little bit more about the range of assessment strategies that I might need to get each kid to show me what they know. Bearing in mind that a kid might not cope well with an analytical essay, but might be able to annotate a scene for me and show exactly the same information. It gives me that chance to amend as I go and make sure that I'm meeting the needs of my kids and that I'm adjusting the challenge for that cohort. Okay, that is one of the amazing opportunities. It's really important to note that this long-term plan doesn't have any context about my kids in my class, nor should it, because that comes down to when I do my short-term planning, right? When I get to my short-term plan, that's when I go, okay, I now need to use this particular pedagogy, this particular strategy, this particular resource, because I know the kids. And one of the advantages of having this planned out in advance is I get to focus on my kids and not on the content. So the long-term plan here is giving me an overview, a structure. As a leader, it's giving me an opportunity to evaluate whether or not we've covered the curriculum. Have we ticked off all of the descriptors for that year level? Have we covered all the key things in the assessment criteria? How many times are we doing that? All there mapped out. And if I'm new to the school, I get handed this and I know exactly what I'm teaching content-wise, which is not the most important part, really, throughout the whole year. Really easy. The next thing you're going to find in the freebie are some samples from the medium term plan, which I've got here. And I've given you a sample of a weekly format, and I've also given you a sample of the overview that's on the front cover. And I want to talk about that too. This is what, remember, you might call a unit plan. It's the one that I hear most often, medium term plan, a unit plan. And this unit plan is given to every teacher who teaches Year 7 English. We're all working from the same unit plan. That's really important. And we'll talk about why that might be a good thing, why that might be a bad thing in a moment. So this medium-term plan overview that you can see here, remember you can download that from edufolios.org/131, has a title page, which again tells me what I'm teaching, how long it's going to go for, what the overview is. It also has the cross-curricular and extracurricular opportunities mapped on here as there were before, science, remember, stem cell research, that kind of thing. But it also has the key concepts taken from the cross-curricular priorities and the general capabilities. So already mapped here are critical and creative thinking, personal and social, intercultural understanding, and literacy mapped on here, which helps me to keep that in my context, in my mind as I'm working through. Each one of the units has this mapped on it, so we can make sure that we're doing our due diligence and that we are hitting the cross-curricular priorities and the general capabilities across our units in the year, which is a requirement. Okay. It also has a box that tells me what resources I need. Awesome. So I can just make sure that that's all organized. And then I've got a little bit more detail about my assessment outcomes and criteria. So remember on the long-term plan, it told me we were doing an analytical essay for reading. Well, now I know from here that the focus is an analytical essay exploring how the writer creates tension. So I can see that. It doesn't tell me what the title is. It doesn't tell me how I'm going to teach that. It doesn't tell me the question I'm going to give the kids. It just tells me the focus is how the writer is creating tension. And the same has been given for the writing and the speaking and listening here. I can see really clearly from that one pager what the key assessment pieces are going to be. Now, more than that, each week, I'm given here 4 or 5 dot points per week of the content that I need to cover in each week. So these unit plans were developed by us in teams. We took the long term plan, we would review that every couple of years. There would be a working party of 3 or 4 of us on each medium term plan, putting all this together, getting the overarching resources together and organized. So this is a collaborative thing. It's a 6.3 and a 6.2. It's a collaboration. And again, week 1, the focus is to establish the conventions of drama and the background context of this novel. I've got the substrands of literature, 1621 and 1803. Those are the Australian curriculum numbers. Literacy, 1720, blah, 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 all written out here. And then coverage. What am I doing? Well, in this week, and I'd have 3 lessons with this class, I need to introduce the notion of drama and what the key terminology of that is, get them to record those definitions, discuss their initial response to the Frankenstein text's front cover and predict the outcome, look at the character and staging aspects from the text and consider what might be the issues around that, begin reading the opening scenes, start adding to our predictions as we go, and in pairs, focus on the key characters using particular dramatic techniques. And also set a homework to begin researching Mary Shelley and give the kids tasks like society, culture, biography, and the influence of the novel. So the outcomes of this week are their research is well established, it's underway, and they understand dramatic terms. They've had a chance to play with that, with the freeze frames and the staging and the labeling of a scene. Okay, and that's what needs to happen in week 1. Those are the coverage outcomes. That again doesn't tell me what my learning objectives are. It doesn't tell me how I'm going to do that. And the magic of this is I don't have to think about what I'm covering. All I have to think about is how I'm going to do it. And every single person who teaches year 7 is looking at these same dot points, which means I get an opportunity to work with my colleagues and share resources and swap ideas. Because, if I'm banding by ability, then mine will be very different if I've got top set to bottom set or middle set. And so it should be. And eventually we'll have a bank of lesson plans to go with this that someone can dip into if they need to. But the idea that I have a weekly outline here gives me the freedom to focus on what's more interesting to me, what's more important than the content, which is my kids and how they're doing. So I know what I'm covering. Now I get to work on how I'm going to cover it. Now, after those examples here in this freebie, you'll see that there are then a couple of pages of reflection questions. I've done that in order from graduate to lead, so you won't need to answer all of them. They're designed to give you a bit of a prompt, but I thought we could talk about that together now in the podcast, because I want to spark a conversation with you about how your planning looks at your site. Hopefully you're planning lessons. Hopefully you've got unit plans. Are you doing that by yourself? Because I see a lot of that. A lot of people going, oh God, I've got to write a unit. Is there not a way that you can collaborate together to share resources? This is great for lead and HA, and come up with set unit plans that go down that you can then evaluate year after year and keep tightening and tweaking together. Is there a long-term plan? I know for some of you the answer is yes. Remember, of course. If you're at uni, have you asked to see the long-term plan, the medium-term plan, so that you know the context of what your kids have already covered when you're on prac and where they're going next? Really important, isn't it? So if we're going to look at this through the standards, I guess we're going to start with standard 2 because that's know the content and how to teach it, right? So the idea is that the medium term and the long term plans give us that opportunity to think about the sequence of the learning, both annually and also unit by unit. So what are the advantages of planning the whole year at that high level that we've already mentioned? We've talked about being able to make sure there's a variety of assessment tasks, but giving the opportunity to plan to hit the same I wanted to say focus area, but that's for you, the same curriculum achievement areas across the year over and over again, so the kids can really solidify that and move into that expert phase. And you can track the impact in those particular areas as well. If it's sequenced in that way and I'm given a week and I look at that and I think, heck, my kids are not going to cover all of that in a week. And I'm sure there were some of you thinking that. What does that mean for you? Is that helping you to understand that you've got to adjust the level of challenge and expectation? You then get to make a professional judgment about quantity over quality. Maybe some of those dot points can be removed so that you can get a higher level of quality on the key outcome, which was to understand dramatic terminology. So maybe we lose some of those tasks, but we make sure that we have nailed the dramatic terminology to the best level possible for our kids. Can you see how having that dot point list gives you the professional freedom to start making those judgments? And of course, reflecting on those and seeing if that works, seeing if you've got kids who are still bored, seeing if you've got kids who need a bit more challenge. Okay, great. I know exactly how to do that. Have a go at this. Okay, it gives you that freedom to do that. If you were to sit down with your team and evaluate your current long-term or medium-term plans, would that give you an opportunity to sit together and share best practice? I'm going to read from the standards here, to lead an initiative maybe to improve the selection and sequence of programs. That's a lead focus area. Have you been doing that? Have you been thinking about documenting that? And also looking at focus area 3.2, about how you're implementing that content and in what order. Also, having those cross-curricular priorities on the front of your medium-term plan makes you think about your subject in a little wider sense. As a high school teacher, I know we're more guilty of being in our silo than our primary school pals. So I'm speaking from a high school experience. I know that, I'm thinking about English and drama, and I need to think about those cross-curricular priorities, those general capabilities. And we know from the podcast a few weeks ago that the evidence in our portfolios, the data inside Edufolios, is showing us that sadly, we're missing a lot of the aitsl conversation. So maybe there are opportunities in your medium-term plans to flag a place where you can bring some of the Indigenous respect and all of those areas into your planning. Maybe there's a way to do that. Maybe ICT is your weakness and you could add an ICT general capability in there. Maybe it's something else, but it's going to give you the opportunity, like we love to at Edufolios, to pause, to reflect and think about the connections outside of your subject. If we move to standard 5 and we think about assessment, and we've mentioned this a few times in this episode, how does planning that whole year give you the opportunity to strategically work with your wide range and repertoire of assessment strategies, formal and informal, summative and formative? You know the focus area I'm talking about. How does that long-term plan or that unit plan help you to evidence those range, that knowledge that you've got? And how does it help you to measure the impact that choosing those different assessment strategies is having on your kids? Have you considered it that way? Okay. These medium-term and long-term plans are a map for your travels with your kids. They should also be a map for key points, key inflections of where you're expecting them to hit a particular goal. So, of course, you're planning to use a range of assessment strategies, and that's also evident in your unit plans and your long-term plans. And finally, if we head into standard 6 and 7, networking, colleagues, moderation, if you are sitting down and everybody is working from the same medium-term plan, how does that help you have really fantastic conversations in which you can share best practice with each other, in which you know the other teacher's going to understand the questions that you have, to let you work together, to let you place and locate opportunities for moderation, group moderation of kids' work, and make sure that everybody's on the same page, that all your kids are in the right place, that they're all tracking as you expect them to be. Your long-term and medium-term plans give you the opportunity, lead and HA teachers to plan those moderation inflections too. Honestly, there is so much to dig into with what you can find to talk about in relation to medium term and long term plans. Definitely grab the freebie because there's plenty of questions in there that dive a little deeper. And as I say, go from graduate all the way to HA. Dive into those and have a little look. Grab it and let me know how you go. Make sure you reflect on this in your EduFolio. You can grab your 14-day free trial. And if you haven't done so, why the heck not? edufolios.org. Check us out. Come and grab an EduFolio and just write about your response to this podcast. What has it brought up for you? What has it got you thinking about? And as I say, I know that every single person listening to this has a different level of experience. So I know the answers will be wild and varied. Uni students are like, oh, okay, right, that makes sense. Leaders are like, right, this is great. I could plan a moderation. I've got to go and evaluate that. I'm hoping that you've had a few aha moments today while you've been listening. Please share them with me. I love to hear them. You can find us at EduFolios on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. And as I've said, this podcast, the video of it is now live on our EduFolios YouTube channel too. Feel free to ask questions there and to comment below the video. We are always happy to answer your questions. I hope that's got you seeing and thinking a little more deeply about your planning. Well, that's it for this episode of the Reflective Teacher Podcast. Keep in touch, and I'll see you this time next week. Take care.